The rivalry between Marvel and DC is practically a classic, right? It's like that never-ending feud between sports teams. On one side, you've got Marvel smashing it with the Avengers, X-Men, and Spider-Man. On the other, DC holds its ground with the Justice League, Batman, and Superman. With so many characters popping up in both publishers, it's only natural that some similar ideas would emerge from time to time. That's fair enough. But man, there are some cases where you just can't ignore it. There's no way it's just a coincidence, you know? Today, I'm going to show you 10 characters where DC clearly looked at Marvel and thought, I think I'll borrow this idea for myself. Let's dive in and uncover these not-so-subtle inspirations. Guardian and Captain America. Let's start with a comparison that feels like a straight-up copy-paste. Seriously, if you put these two side by side, the resemblance is hard to ignore. Both are patriotic superheroes wielding indestructible shields and showcasing hand-to-hand combat skills that would make anyone think twice before picking a fight. Now, Captain America debuted in 1941, right in the middle of World War II, as a symbol of the fight against Nazism. Guardian, on the other hand, came along in 1942. Coincidence? Hard to believe. Even their backstories have striking similarities. Both are natural leaders and embody the ideal soldier archetype. The only major difference is that Guardian doesn't have superpowers or a super soldier serum backing him up. But let's be real, DC clearly took the hero with a shield concept and gave it a slight makeover. It's not exactly subtle, is it? Red Hood and Winter Soldier. Now, get ready for a comparison that feels like recycled storytelling. Bucky Barnes first appeared way back in 1941 during the Timely Comics era as Captain America's loyal sidekick. Decades later, in 2005, he got an incredible revamp, re-emerging as the Winter Soldier, a seemingly villainous character controlled by Hydra, sporting a cybernetic arm and deadly skills. Meanwhile, Jason Todd, DC's Robin, made his debut in 1983 and also met a dramatic end. But in the same year as Bucky's transformation, Jason returned as Red Hood, a brooding anti-hero fueled by bitterness. The twist? While both characters were reinvented in the same year, Winter Soldier's arc had already been well established before Jason's dark turn, and the parallels are hard to miss. Both were manipulated, endured tragic pasts, and were reborn as vengeful figures before eventually finding redemption. Coincidence? Feels more like an obvious case of inspiration, don't you think? Red Tool and Deadpool. Now let's talk about a copy of a copy. Just from the names, it's clear the inspiration wasn't exactly subtle. Deadpool, introduced in 1991, was already a playful nod to Deathstroke, so much so that Wade Wilson's name is a tongue-in-cheek reference to Slade Wilson. But in 2014, DC decided to flip the script with Red Tool, an eccentric and violent anti-hero who, let's be honest, is a blatant knockoff of Deadpool. The similarities go beyond just the name. Both characters have over-the-top personalities, sharp-tongued humor, exaggerated fighting styles, and a penchant for breaking the fourth wall. In Red Tool's case, this is taken to such extremes that he almost feels like a parody of Deadpool. Even their costumes are cut from the same cloth, with just slight tweaks in color. If Marvel created Deadpool as a cheeky homage to a DC character, DC didn't hold back with Red Tool, openly copying Deadpool in the most obvious way. So, here's the real question. Which one's your favorite? Red Lion and Black Panther. Black Panther first debuted in 1966 as T'Challa, the King of Wakanda, a refined and strategic hero whose iconic suit and incredible abilities made him one of Marvel's most memorable characters. Fast forward to 2016, and DC introduced Red Lion, aka Matthew Bland, a ruthless and manipulative warlord. While DC attempted to set Bland apart by leaning into his more villainous nature, the glaring similarities are impossible to miss. Both characters wear suits inspired by wild animals, possess superhuman abilities, and are deeply tied to the political power of their respective nations. Black Panther symbolizes the nobility and leadership of Wakanda, while Red Lion embodies ambition and control. It's hard not to see Red Lion as DC's attempt at crafting a darker Black Panther, but let's be real, the inspiration is pretty obvious. Aquaman and Namor. They're so similar, it feels like they came from the same aquarium. Namor was the Trailblazer, debuting in 1939 as one of Marvel's first characters back when it was Timely Comics. He brought it all: the underwater kingdom, mixed parentage, one human, one Atlantean, and a royal title. Then, 2 years later in 1941, DC introduced Aquaman with a nearly identical backstory. The main differences? Costume and appearance. Namor rocked a bold look with his green trunks and ankle wings, while Aquaman sported an orange and green uniform. But at their core, both are rulers of Atlantis, grapple with prejudice from both humans and Atlanteans, and face the classic hero dilemma of being torn between two worlds. Namor leans more into the anti-hero archetype with his fiery temper, while Aquaman takes a more straightforward, heroic path. Still, the similarities are undeniable. It's like they're competing for the same throne. Wasp and Bumblebee. Here's another comparison that's sure to stir up debate. Wasp debuted in 1963 as one of the founding members of the Avengers, bringing agility, the power to shrink, energy blasts, and tons of charisma to the team. Then, 13 years later, in 1976, DC introduced Bumblebee, whose powers are strikingly similar: shrinking, flight, and energy attacks. To stand out a bit, DC made Bumblebee the first black female superhero in their comics, which was an important milestone. However, despite this, Bumblebee never achieved the same level of popularity as Wasp, who was already an established and beloved character in the Marvel Universe with years of rich storytelling. In the end, DC swapped a Wasp for a bee, but it seems like all the honey stayed with Marvel, don't you think? Gangbuster and Daredevil. Now, let's tackle this next comparison. Daredevil first appeared in 1964, introducing us to Matt Murdock, the blind lawyer who defends Hell's Kitchen in his red suit, using acrobatics and his iconic batons. Then, decades later in 1987, DC unveiled Gangbuster, aka Jose Delgado, an urban hero fighting to protect Suicide Slum in Metropolis. And here's where the similarities start to show. Similar suits, similar color schemes, and even the use of batons as a primary weapon. Sure, urban heroes have always been a thing, but the connection between these two is hard to overlook. While Matt balances legal justice by day and vigilante work by night, Jose dives straight into the grit of street-level heroics, confronting social issues head-on. In the end, it feels like DC looked at Daredevil and thought, let's add a more grounded, realistic touch and bring this to our universe. But let's be honest, the inspiration is pretty obvious. Rocket Red Brigade and Iron Man. The comparison between DC's Rocket Red Brigade and Marvel's Iron Man is almost unavoidable. Iron Man, created in 1963, introduced Tony Stark, a billionaire genius who developed an advanced suit of armor to combat global threats. Meanwhile, the Rocket Red Brigade debuted in 1987 as a group of Russian soldiers outfitted with high-tech armor, designed to compete with Western heroes, especially during the peak of the Cold War. While the Rocket Red Brigade operates as a collective force, their armored suits, combat capabilities, and the concept of using advanced technology to balance opposing powers draw a direct line to Iron Man's influence. The key difference? Tony Stark is charismatic and singular, while the Rocket Reds come across as generic soldiers sharing the same look. The Marvel inspiration is clear, but the Rocket Red Brigade lacks that unique spark to truly stand out. Sideways and Ultimate Spider-Man. Now, for a more modern comparison. Ultimate Spider-Man debuted in 2000, breathing new life into the classic Peter Parker with dynamic storytelling and a tone that perfectly resonated with a new generation. It became the gold standard for modernizing superheroes. Then, nearly 2 decades later, in 2018, DC introduced Derek James, aka Sideways, a character that screams inspired by Spider-Man in nearly every way. Derek deals with school bullying, lives with adoptive parents, and navigates a complicated romance. Dilemmas strikingly similar to Peter Parker's. And if that weren't enough, just take a look at his stylish costume, his witty personality, and his acrobatic poses. They directly echo Spider-Man's essence. It seems DC wanted to create its own updated teen hero, but it's hard to ignore where the inspiration came from. Sideways feels like DC's take on Ultimate Spider-Man. Imperiex and Galactus. Not even Galactus, Marvel's legendary world devourer, escaped DC's homage. Galactus debuted in 1966, crafted by the brilliant Jack Kirby as a cosmic entity that consumes entire planets to satisfy his insatiable hunger. Then in 2000, DC introduced Imperiex, who upped the ante by devouring universes. Sure, the scale is bigger, but the inspiration is crystal clear. Imperix's futuristic armor screams Kirby's influence, with its cosmic aesthetic that only Kirby could master. The difference? While Galactus has been the centerpiece of unforgettable stories, Imperiex ended up as the main villain in the somewhat forgettable storyline Our Worlds at War. It feels like DC tried to take Galactus's threat to an even more absurd level, but the result didn't quite stick. One devours planets, the other consumes universes, but the inspiration from Marvel is impossible to deny. Did you enjoy the list? And stay tuned. Next time, I'll flip the script and showcase characters Marvel borrowed from DC. You didn't think I'd let them off the hook, did you?